Friday morning to you. It's February 16th, 2025, and we're sticking with storage to corral some of our scraps. And this is a project I've wanted to do for a long time. You were with us last week. We did a larger paper and finished ephemera box. This week I'm doing a small file folder style box. It seems like file folders are coming around again as popular projects. So you saw me cut and flatten a cracker box and cut it in half. And then you'll see me subsequently cut it down even more. But for right now, to glue it back together, I'm using what I call the square enough method. I get my glue on my flaps and I just line up the vertical and horizontal with the lines on my mat and call it good. I've put tools and materials over on the right for you, and you can see where I cut my box down by slitting the sides and then folding down 1 inch. What I should have done and what you should do is cut that top inch off if the size of your box is too tall for the size you want to make your file folders. And don't forget the tabs should stick up above or at least be parallel with the top of the box, depending on, whether you want to make a top or not. I'm not yet sure whether I'm going to make a top, so I just folded down all of my flaps, which you would have cut off if you decide not to make a top, and kind of scored them by folding. I left the back one sticking up for no apparent reason, and I may have to glue it down later. Since I don't know whether I'm going to make a top, I'm just going to move on because we are also going to make file folders to go inside this box, and we are going to make them box folders. We might add gussets and we might not. We'll just have to see how this goes. I made myself a template out of a 6x6 piece of cardstock, and this cardstock I've had for a long time. I have cut it down to 5x6, and then I have scored it at a ½ inch. That's how high I want my tab to be. I'm not going to use that score line. It's just there for reference. And so I also scored at 3 1/4 and 3½ inches for my box bottom of my folder. Since these are only 5 inches wide, I just decided to do a right tab and a left tab to make it easy on myself for these folders. All these primary colors are not colors that I use very often, and I've had this around forever, so I just want to start using it up, and it was easy for these couple of folders to just make right and left tabs. I'm going to make other file folders to hold other things, but these are just probably going to live in the back of the box and hold their color, purple, orange, yellow, green, what have you. I rounded all the corners, and what you're seeing me do here is just cut off the excess up to the valley of the tab so that it would sit on the left-hand side. I wanted these tabs to be a little wider because I intend on putting labels on them. Not that you need labels necessarily. The colors themselves tell you what's in the folders, but sometimes you just go overboard and don't realize you're doing it. So here I've done all of the cuts, and all I'm doing now is just trimming where I don't need the excess in the valleys of the file folder cuts. And we'll speed this up because we've still got to cover our box and make more file folders and all that jazz. But for those of you who've never made your own file folders. I wanted you to see how the cuts go so that you'll understand that whether you're doing a third cut or a double cut like I am, or doing a fifth cut, it's all the same process. You cut off the access from all of your file folders. And now I'm just going to fold up the box joints and see if they all fit in the box as I hope they do, as I cut them to fit. But when you're doing these things by yourself from scratch, even if you've seen tutorials and done them before, a dry fit is always a good idea so that you can make sure that everything fits as it's supposed to. And I confused myself there because I didn't put red in the front and thought, oh, for heaven's sakes, I'm going to have two cuts there where they are lined up the same, but all I had to do was switch them around and they were fine. And now I'm just lining them up to make sure that they are all the same height. And you could stop there and bind them all together with 2 or 3 tabs and have a different project than what we're doing here, kind of like what we did with the envelopes and the file cards in Junk Journal January. Here's where we are so far. We have our box all dry and our cards in it. I am going to glue down the back flap. So we also need to decorate the box. Let's do that. Boy, am I glad I'm doing voiceovers, because as soon as I loaded this clip, I could hear my furnace roaring. And so, voiceovers, they're great. The first thing I need to do is score and fold that last flap in and get it glued down. Won't take very long for it to set because I'm using Fabrifix or Fabri-Tac, whichever one is in my glue bottle at the moment. And so I clamp it for a few minutes, and then after that I'm able to work on this without worrying about the flaps not catching and grabbing. After that, I'm going to tear up some book pages, and I'm going to cover the outside first, starting with the 4 corners, and then I'll do the 2 long sides and then the short sides. Then I'll go into the inside and cover it as well. And as you can see, I'm making little tiny relief cuts there so that my flaps will go in and not catch on each other and not throw my box out of alignment even more than they already are. Remember what I said about square enough earlier in the show? Well, that's what we're going for, because these boxes are going to be out of line the more you mess around with them. However, the end result, as you will see, is fairly passable as far as being squared up. I've sped this way up because it's a lot of ripping and gluing, and I can't tell you whether I stayed in camera or not. Nevertheless, if you're new here and you've never been to this channel, it's primarily a DIY channel. And I tend to do paper crafting in the beginning of the year because I participate in Junk Journal January, which is hosted by Meg Journals and is 31 different prompts. There are no rules. You can do your Junk Journal January any way you like. You can combine prompts if you want to. It's over now because it's February, but I see there are quite a few people who are just now doing their Junk Journal January 2025 flip throughs, and all you have to do is put Junk Journal January 2025 in the search box, or leave 2025 off, and you can see past Junk Journal Januaries as well as this year's Junk Journal January. And now I'm starting to cut my end papers for the outside, and I am kind of half eyeballing and half measuring. And the only reason I'm doing that is to make sure that I can get pieces for both sides out of one book page. I took a beach novel size book and ripped out a few pages. So let's do some measuring a little bit and some ripping and some gluing. The only thing I really care about is to have enough overhang on the end pieces to fold them around the end and over the top and bottom, 1/2 inch, 1/3 of an inch. I kind of just eyeballed it. And for the front pieces, I wanted them to fit just inside the area of the front. So I'm cutting them a little less wide than the surface of the front, but I still need overhang top and bottom so that I can wrap the paper underneath and then down into the inside of the box a little bit. The reason for that is that I'm going to do essentially the same thing on the inside. So after this first couple of pieces where you can see what I'm doing, and I forgot to fold it in half first there, so it's full of glue, and we just work around it. Now you can see how it overhangs. My tendency was to let it overhang more on the top than on the bottom, and you will see me making little relief cuts so that my papers don't overhang each other at the corners. And I didn't really see a way of doing that in the beginning, but now that I think about it, I probably would have made my fold, made my relief cuts, and then put glue on it. Now I've got the hang of it, and I'm folding first. Nevertheless, you get the idea. As has been customary for 2025, I got rolling and wasn't paying attention to the camera at all, and the camera's battery quit on me. So you get the idea what I'm doing here, and we're going to speed along to the stuffing of the box. I forgot to turn it back on. I kept thinking to myself, oh, I better turn it back on, and I didn't. So the box is decorated with just random ephemera. It doesn't really have, a theme. It's just random ephemera. And we'll figure out what to put in this box. Just like the last project we did where we made an ephemera box, the fit on these file folders is very tight. It looks like they dropped right in there. But when I started moving them around, I realized that some of them were sticking on the sides a little bit. So I trimmed those folders just a 32nd of an inch, and everything fits in fine. Now I have these washi stickers that I don't ever use because, once again, I can't see them. And part of these projects is to put things where I can see them and will use them because I can see them. So I decided to use this box for those packets of washi stickers. Flowers in the back, then butterflies, then some ferns and leaves, and then finally some random florals. And in the very front, in the red one, is all of the loose pieces that I have found, and when I find them on the floor or under a pack of scrap paper, I just was sticking them in a tray, and now I have a place for them. I still have the top half of that box that I can do something with, and I'm not sure what I'm going to use it for. Nevertheless, thanks for joining me. I appreciate it. I hope you learned something. I hope I inspired you to make something completely different, or at least start a junk journal. God bless you. See you real soon.